Establishing agricultural administration systems.
In this segment, we will see how post-liberation South Korea reorganized its agricultural education and extension systems by transitioning from the Japanese colonial model to an American-influenced approach, ultimately establishing a functional national agricultural research and guidance structure. Upon the liberation in 1945, the breeding system built during the Japanese colonial period was transferred to Korean hands. The colonial government's agricultural experiment station and provincial branches were renamed as the Central Agricultural Experiment Station under the U.S. military government in February 1946, and then reorganized as the Agricultural Improvement Institute and its subordinate National Agricultural Experiment Station in December 1947. The essence of this measure was to transform the agricultural extension system from the Japanese to the American model. The U.S. military government considered the Japanese extension system to be undemocratic due to its top-down and uniform approach, and sought to transplant the American system where agricultural education, research, and guidance were integrated at local extension offices. The Agricultural Improvement Institute was reorganized with the establishment of the South Korean government in 1948. On January 6, 1949, the Agricultural Technology Institute was launched by integrating experiment station and extension bureaus. The institute consisted of an experimental department, a technical extension department, and an administrative division. Additionally, 4 local branch institutes were established to handle specialized research, namely breeding, cotton cultivation, livestock, and seedling cultivation. However, this reorganized rural guidance system didn't have a chance to properly function as the Korean War broke out the following year. In 1951, the National Assembly in the temporary capital of Busan eliminated the entire budget for the Agricultural Technology Institute, leaving rural extension activities neglected for some time.
American Advisors and Macy Report.
The resumption of agricultural extension activities was triggered by the United States Korean Reconstruction Agency, or UNCRA. Upon UNCRA's request, the Food and Agriculture Organization surveyed South Korea and recommended restarting agricultural extension activities. In response, UNCRA provided $250,000 to the Korean government in 1953 for export training and material imports. Meanwhile, in early 1956, a U.S. International Cooperation Administration, or ICA, survey team visited Korea, led by Harold Macy, Dean of the University of Minnesota's College of Agriculture. The Macy report recommended the South Korean government to establish the Agricultural Extension Organization by law while securing the necessary budget. In response, the Korea and U.S. governments signed the Agreement on the Development of Agricultural Extension Programs in 1956, with the U.S. government agreeing to provide funds for export education and office construction. Following this agreement, the Institute of Agriculture, or 농사원, opened on May 28, 1957. The central organization of the institute consisted of 2 bureaus, 5 experiment stations, and 1 research institute. The 5 experiment stations and 1 research institute covered a wide range of practical topics, namely crop cultivation, horticulture, sericulture, forestry, livestock, and veterinary science. Chung Nam-gyu was appointed as the first director of the Institute of Agriculture. Chung had graduated from Suwon Agricultural School with top honors and from Kyoto Imperial University's Faculty of Agriculture, and later, while serving as a professor at Seoul National University's College of Agriculture after liberation, studies in the United States and received master's and doctoral degrees in agricultural economics from the University of Wisconsin.
Office of Rural Development and Extension Infrastructure.
The Institute of Agriculture, which had been operating for just over 4 years, faced a crisis following the May 16 coup d'etat in 1961. The Supreme Council for National Reconstruction, the core of the junta, in 1961 amended the Agricultural Extension Law to the Agricultural Research and Extension Law, transferring provincial institutes to provincial governors and city-county extension offices to city-county industry departments. However, when the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry attempted to bring the central organization of the institute under its control, friction arose between the ministry and the institute. In November 1961, the ministry suggested a blueprint for reorganization, proposing to transfer all of the institute's organization to internal bureaus of the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry. The institute naturally strongly opposed this and advocated for the independence of extension organizations. Eventually, on February 9, 1962, Supreme Council Chairman Park Chung-hee directed the prompt unification of the rural guidance system, specifically ordering the establishment of the Rural Development Administration as an external agency of the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry. Accordingly, the Rural Development Act was promulgated on March 21, 1962, and the Rural Development Administration was officially launched on April 1st. The RDA expanded beyond the scale of the former Institute of Agriculture by integrating several subordinated branches of the ministry. At the local level, provincial institutes, community development divisions of provincial industry bureaus, and provincial agricultural experiment and extension functions were integrated into provincial rural development institutes under provincial governors. Provincial rural development institutes included subordinated facilities such as tree nurseries, silkworm breeding stations, livestock breeding stations, and animal health centers.
Rapid growth of agriculture research and extension personnel.
Despite frequent organizational restructuring, agricultural extension agencies grew progressively larger in scale, with corresponding increases in research and guidance personnel. Research staff increased from 174 in 1953 during the Central Agricultural Technology Institute era to 273 in 1957 and further to 383 in 1962 with the establishment of the RDA. Expansion continued after the RDA's establishment, nearly doubling to 649 by 1965. This growth coincided with the expansion of agricultural departments at universities. As rice production policies were honestly implemented in the 1970s, research personnel increased even more substantially. By 1975, there were 799 total research staff, 547 in central agencies plus 252 in provincial rural development institutes. Extension personnel grew from 952 in 1957 to 1,192 in 1960 and dramatically increased to 4,790 in 1964 after the RDA establishment, as extension branch offices were set up in towns and villages. This number further increased to 6,534 by 1969 and expanded significantly again in the 1970s with the addition of over 1,000 Tongil production staff.